29th, May 1453, dawn broke over Constantinople. But the city awoke to thunder, not of storms, but of cannon. Venetian surgeon Niccolo Barbaro, who witnessed the siege, recorded in his diary, "The walls fell stone by stone. With such thunder, it seemed the world itself would end." At the gate of St. Romanus, smoke rose and drifted across the dome of Hagia Sophia, dimming the morning light. Priests marched through narrow streets, holding aloft relics said to protect the city. A mother pressed bread crusts into her children's hands, bread so scarce its price had multiplied tenfold in the final weeks. Soldiers, pale with exhaustion, jammed stones and wood into crumbling breaches, their tunics blackened by smoke. Everyone knew the repairs would not last the day. Beyond the walls stood Sultan Mehmed II, barely 21, yet already a master of war. Estimates of his army vary. Latin chroniclers wrote of 100,000. Ottoman records suggest fewer. But to the Byzantines, the number felt infinite. The Janissaries, drilled since boyhood, waited in silence. Cavalry pawed the earth. Behind them loomed weapons the city had never faced. Orban's giant bombards. One shot hurled a stone of nearly 800 kilograms, each impact shaking towers that had stood for 1,000 years. Inside the palace, Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos prepared for death. Venetian ships waited in the harbor, offering escape. He refused. Witnesses later claimed he tore away his purple cloak, declaring, "I will die as a soldier among soldiers." When the walls fell, he disappeared into the chaos. His body was never found. By noon, the crescent flag of the Ottomans crowned the ramparts. Hagia Sophia, once the greatest cathedral of Christendom, echoed with the call to prayer. For Europe, it was the night the Second Rome died. For the Ottomans, it was the dawn of Istanbul. But here lies the darker question. How could an empire that once ruled from Spain to Syria, that outlasted Rome itself by 1,000 years, collapse in a single morning? The answer is not found only in cannon smoke. Byzantium's enemies did not destroy it alone. For centuries, the empire carved its own flesh. Emperors blinding rivals, nobles inviting foreign armies, priests splitting Christendom apart. In 1204, supposed Christian allies, the Crusaders, sacked the city. They dragged away relics, melted gold from altars, burned libraries. Nicetas Choniates, who survived, wrote in fury, "Even the Saracens are merciful compared with these men who call themselves Christians." By 1453, Constantinople still glittered outwardly. Its mosaics glowed, its choirs sang. But the coffers were empty. The army dwindled, its allies few. For generations, Byzantines believed their walls invincible, their city eternal. Yet walls alone do not save a people. On that May morning, the empire did not simply fall to Mehmed's cannon. It collapsed under the weight of its own betrayals. You are about to step into the shadows of the Ottoman Empire, where power, ambition, and deadly plots shaped history. Subscribe now so you don't miss a single detail of palace intrigues, power struggles, and the secrets history tried to hide. Comment below. Which plot do you think was the cruelest, within the palace or on the battlefield? Like the video if you want to uncover the hidden truths, and turn on notifications to dive deeper into the dark stories of fallen empires. The year was 330 AD. The Roman Empire staggered under corruption and barbarian raids. Even Rome itself, the so-called Eternal City, no longer felt safe. Into this crisis stepped Constantine the Great, determined not to patch the old order, but to remake it. He turned east to the Bosporus Strait, a narrow waterway joining Europe and Asia. Whoever controlled it held the grain fleets from the Black Sea, the silk caravans from China, the spice trade from India. Geography here was destiny. On the ruins of the Greek town Byzantium, Constantine raised a new capital. Officially named Nova Roma, the world soon called it Constantinople. The city was adorned with trophies, columns from Delphi, statues from Athens, relics stripped from forgotten shrines. At its heart stood the Hippodrome, where 30,000 roared as chariots thundered past. The Forum of Constantine displayed a colossal statue of the emperor, haloed like Apollo, but bearing a Christian cross. The message was unmistakable. This was Rome reborn, sanctified for a new age. Yet Constantinople's greatest strength lay not in splendor, but in stone. In the early 5th century rose the Theodosian walls, nearly 4 miles of triple fortification, moats wide enough for boats, towers bristling every 50 meters. For a millennium, they defied Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, even Viking raiders. Across the Golden Horn stretched a massive chain capable of trapping whole fleets. No other city so perfectly combined wealth and security. Under Justinian I, 527 to 565. The empire's ambitions soared. His general Belisarius reconquered North Africa, Italy, and parts of Spain, briefly restoring the Mediterranean as a Roman lake. Yet Justinian's greatest monument was not conquest, but creation. After the Nika revolt of 532 left much of the city in ashes, he rebuilt it grander than before. At its center rose the Hagia Sophia, its dome 100 feet across, glowing with golden mosaics. One visitor wrote, it seemed suspended from heaven by a chain of light. Entering it, Justinian is said to have whispered, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee." At his side stood Empress Theodora, once an actress of humble birth, now a partner in power. Chroniclers called her bold and unyielding, the true steel behind the throne. By the 6th century, Constantinople was hailed as the queen of cities. Markets overflowed with silk and gold. Its harbors bristled with warships armed with Greek fire, and its scribes preserved the wisdom of antiquity. When Rome in the West fell in 476, Constantinople did not mourn. It thrived. It was not a ghost of Rome, but Rome reborn. By the 9th century, Constantinople stood unmatched. Travelers who passed through the Golden Gate described bronze-plated towers, marble-paved streets, and markets that seemed endless. The Arab geographer Al-Muqaddasi marveled that its bazaars sold silks from China, amber from the Baltic, ivory from Africa, spices from India. To him, it was a place where all the world's goods are gathered. Along the Makros Embolos, merchants shouted prices, coins clinked. Carts creaked under crates of saffron and wine. Venetians bargained in rough Greek. Rus merchants laid out furs and honey. Pilgrims rubbed shoulders with monks selling relics. To walk those streets was to feel half the world compressed into one city. Inside the great palace, power became spectacle. Ambassadors recorded bronze lions, that roared by hidden hydraulics, golden birds that sang from mechanical trees, and a jeweled throne that rose into the air. Constantine VII, Porphyrogenitus, both emperor and scholar, even compiled the De Ceremoniis, prescribing every bow, robe, and hymn of court ritual. To stand before the emperor was not politics, it was theater imbued with divinity. Faith crowned this magnificence. The Hagia Sophia, rebuilt by Justinian centuries earlier, still dominated the skyline. Its vast dome glittered with mosaics of Christ Pantocrator, seemingly suspended on light. Pilgrims spoke of lamps that never burned out and relics that healed disease. The city guarded what many believed to be the Virgin's robe, fragments of the true cross, even the lance that pierced Christ's side. Yet Byzantium's glory went beyond ritual. In monasteries, monks copied the works of Homer, Plato, and Galen, preserving them for a world that would one day call it the Renaissance. Engineers perfected Greek fire, a weapon so feared that Arab fleets described it as sorcery, liquid flame hurled across the waves, burning even upon water. The empire's military power peaked under Basil II, 976 to 1025, the Bulgar Slayer. For nearly 50 years, he campaigned relentlessly, expanding the empire from the Adriatic to the Euphrates. Chroniclers claimed that after his victory at Clydian, he blinded thousands of prisoners. Legend or truth, the tale alone was enough to freeze enemies in fear. By the 11th century, gold flooded the markets, the navy ruled the seas, and the emperor's Varangian guard, towering Norsemen wielding axes, stood as symbols of loyalty and reach. In the sagas of Scandinavia, the city was whispered as Miklagard, the great city. To outsiders, Byzantium seemed eternal, chosen by God himself. Yet brilliance always casts shadows, and behind the glitter, cracks had already begun to spread. For all its golden domes and marble avenues, Byzantium carried a sickness at its core. Power in Constantinople was never safe. It was seized, stolen, betrayed. Few emperors died in peace. In 813, Leo V was cut down during Christmas Mass, murdered not by enemies at the walls, but by conspirators behind the altar. In 1072, the once proud Romanos IV Diogenes, hero of Manzikert, returned blind and broken, left to die in a monastery. Blinding became the empire's cruel signature, an emperor alive but ruined, a reminder of ambition's cost. Civil wars bled the empire like a slow wound. Generals marched on the capital with their own armies, offering fortresses and provinces to foreign allies in exchange for power. The Rus, the Pechenegs, even the Turks were welcomed as friends, only to carve pieces from the empire. The proud theme system, where farmer soldiers defended their own fields, withered as aristocrats swallowed estates. Peasants fled to the cities, farms lay empty, and the army shrank. By the 11th century, Byzantium still glittered with ritual, but its ranks were dangerously thin. Religion, meant to unite, instead tore the empire apart. The iconoclast controversy of the 8th and 9th centuries saw emperors order icons smashed and mosaics scraped from church walls. Monks resisted and were beaten or exiled. Believers watched their saints vanish under imperial decree. Faith itself turned into a battlefield. Then in 1054, the Great Schism split east and west. Papal legates laid a bull of excommunication on Hagia Sophia's altar. The patriarch answered in kind. Suspicion hardened into permanent hostility. And when Byzantium later begged the West for aid, mistrust lingered like poison. Even insiders saw the decay. Anna Komnene, daughter of Alexios I, described a court where eunuchs whispered and nobles schemed, while soldiers on the frontiers went unpaid. To foreign envoys, the city still dazzled with jewels and silk, but behind the pageantry, its foundation crumbled. The darkest wound came in 1204, not from Muslims, but from fellow Christians. The Fourth Crusade, lured by Venetian greed and Byzantine infighting, turned its swords on Constantinople. Survivor Nikitas Choniates wrote in fury. Relics desecrated, women assaulted, libraries burned, altars stripped. The bronze horses of the Hippodrome were dragged to Venice, where they stand today. The Byzantines reclaimed the city in 1261, but it was never the same. Its population halved, its treasury empty, its empire fractured. Constantinople still shone in the sun, but like glass already cracked, it was fragile and doomed. Byzantium's greatest enemy was never Persians, Arabs, or Turks. Its greatest enemy was itself. By the 15th century, Byzantium was a shadow of itself. Anatolia was gone, the Balkans fractured, and what remained was the queen of cities and a few scattered outposts. Yet still the Theodosian walls stood, triple fortifications that for 1,000 years had defied Persians, Arabs, and Bulgars. To the weary Byzantines, they seemed eternal. In 1543, Sultan Mehmed II, only 21, brought perhaps 60 to 100,000 men. His janissaries drilled from childhood, his cavalry eager for plunder, and behind them, the terrifying new bombards of Orban, hurling stone balls up to 800 kilograms. Each shot shook the ground like thunder, tearing at towers that had stood for centuries. Inside, Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos commanded barely 7,000 defenders. Greeks, Venetians, Genoese under Giovanni Giustiniani, Venetian surgeon Niccolo Barbaro, who chronicled the siege, wrote of women boiling pitch, monks hauling stones, and bread prices soaring tenfold. Some citizens boiled weeds for food, yet still they patched the breaches each night by torchlight. For 53 days, the cannons roared. The Byzantines raised the great iron chain across the Golden Horn, but Mehmed shocked the world. His men dragged galleys across greased logs overland, launching them into the harbor behind the defenses. Even nature seemed against the city. Earthquakes rattled the walls, storms battered morale. On the night of 28th May, the people gathered for one last liturgy in Hagia Sophia. Greeks and Latins, rich and poor, stood together beneath the dome, whispering prayers, some claiming to see angels at the walls. For one night, centuries of division. At dawn, Mehmed gave the order. First irregulars, then Anatolian troops, then the Janissaries surged forward. At the gate of St. Romatus, Giustiniani fell wounded and was carried away. Panic rippled through the ranks. Some accounts speak of a small gate, the Kirkoporta, left open or forced. Truth or legend, it became the symbol of fatal oversight. Constantine XI refused to flee. Throwing aside his purple cloak, he is said to have cried, "The city is fallen, but I live still," and disappeared into the melee. His body was never found. By midday, Ottoman banners crowned the ramparts. Mehmed rode through the broken walls in awe of his prize. In Hagia Sophia, the choirs of Christendom gave way to the call to prayer. After more than 1,000 years, the Byzantine Empire was gone, not with silence, but with thunder, fire, and the blood of its last emperor staining the stones. The Byzantine Empire died on 29th May 1453, but its shadow never vanished. Like Rome before it, Constantinople did not disappear in silence. It scattered fragments that shaped the world for centuries. Its first legacy was knowledge. For 1,000 years, Byzantine monks copied the works of Homer, Plato, Aristotle, and Galen, preserving what the West nearly lost. When the city fell, scholars fled to Italy. Cardinal Bessarion carried his library to Venice, while others taught Greek in Florence and Padua. Their manuscripts became fuel for the Renaissance, sparking the rebirth of learning in Europe. Its second legacy was law. Under Justinian I, the Corpus Juris Civilis distilled centuries of Roman jurisprudence. Taught in Bologna and Paris, it shaped medieval courts and later modern codes. Even today, in debates over contracts or property, the voice of Justinian lingers. Its third legacy was faith. The Eastern Orthodox Church, nurtured in Constantinople, outlived the empire itself. Its chants, icons, and domes spread through Greece, Russia, and the Balkans. The liturgy that once filled Hagia Sophia still resounds in Moscow's cathedrals and on Mount Athos. The empire died, but its church endured. Its fourth legacy was art and architecture. The mosaics of Ravenna, the icons of Athos, the domes of Kiev and Moscow all bear Byzantine fingerprints. Even its conquerors borrowed from it. Hagia Sophia, transformed into a mosque, inspired the great works of Sinan, who built the Sulaymaniyeh and the Blue Mosque. Byzantium's genius could not be erased. It became the foundation for new greatness. But Byzantium's most haunting gift is a warning. For 1,000 years it stood against Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, and Turks. None could topple it from without. Yet civil wars, greed, and betrayal hollowed it from within. Nobles traded provinces for power. Priests fractured Christendom with the Great Schism, and crusaders once meant to defend it instead plundered it in 1204. By the time Mehmed's cannons thundered, the empire had already broken itself. The Byzantines believed their city eternal, shielded by saints and walls. But eternity proved fragile. The fall of Constantinople was not only an end, it was a mirror. It shows us how all empires rise, glitter, fracture, and collapse. Power fades, glory becomes dust. What remains are lessons. And in every dome that glitters, every law that governs, every manuscript read today, Byzantium whispers still.